This is an exciting day for me because I'm going to get to share the stage today with not one, but two CEOs. And they are going to help us work through a problem. It's not a problem exactly, but it's something that is surfaced in questions that people ask frequently about MojaLoop implementations. And I thought it would be a worthwhile thing just to talk through the different approaches to the question of professional expertise in implementing payment systems and the various alternatives that are available. Now, I don't think there's any right answer here. This is about exploring the alternatives so that hopefully all those of you sensible people who are going to be implementing MojaLoop systems across Africa and elsewhere can make the right decision for you about the balance between essentially doing things yourself and bringing in external subject matter experts to do things for you. So I am happy to say that my panel is going to consist, apart from me myself, who I shall skip over, of Jedida Ndebele, who is the CEO of Cabeza Clearinghouse. It's my pleasure. And Ni Ai, who is the CEO of ThitsaWorks. So I will do a brief slide introduction, and then I will pass over to my two illustrious guests to enable them to talk about, first of all, the kinds of requirements that we're interested in, and second of all, in Ni's case, the sorts of value that a third-party subject matter expert can bring to the implementation of MojaLoop systems. So, those of you who've seen my presentations before will know that I not infrequently have people making guest appearances in my presentations. Now, often these people are philosophers, but not in this case. I went for my illustrative quotations in this presentation to the world of soul music, and in particular to a soul band called Gabriel's, whom I recommend to all those of you who love a beautiful soul voice. But I want to quote from a song of theirs called Blame, and part of the lyric goes like this: "Can't be a slave if I'm already free. Can't be a captive if it's where I want to be." Now, when people talk about lock-in in implementations and the operation of systems, essentially what they mean is they feel a friction between how they want to work and the constraints that they're under. And the purpose of this is to enable people to get into the position where they are where they want to be, and therefore the question of lock-ins and not lock-ins does not arise. So, let me start. Why do people buy open source software? Why do people use open source software is what I meant to say. So you get the software itself, and you get access to a community, as we've just heard, which is dedicated to constantly improving the software. But then, if you ask, what proportion of the total effort of implementing and operating a payment system is in the software? Well, you can look at the components of a payment system. There's lots of them. All of these things are things that you will have to do if you're implementing a payment system. And if you say, how many of those will I have to pay for, whether I have open source software or commercial software? The answer is most of the things that you will have to do, and among them a lot of the most expensive things, will be there whether you use open source software or commercially available software. So you get some let-offs, and those are the red items in that list, if you use open source software. Some things you don't have to pay for, but everything that's in green, or I think in amber, well, maybe there isn't any amber anymore, you will still have to do somehow, some way. Now, let's look at the various alternatives for how you might pay. You could buy the service from an SME. And I'm an SME like, for instance, ThitsWorks, Infotex, Wiredin. A number of SMEs are here today and happy to answer questions. Now, that accelerates the implementation. You're getting people who are already experts in MojaLoop systems and who can make it very much quicker for you to implement your system. You get immediate conversion of cache to function. So these people are ready to go immediately when you want to start. But you run the risk of vendor lock-in, and this is the paradox. The better these people, the more value they add, the more difficult it's going to be for you to switch and move and use another system integrator, for instance, if you decide you want to do that. An alternative is I could hire and train my own staff and get them to do it. Now, that results in a long lead time to productivity. This is a complicated product, it has to be. It's a payment system that's going to run interoperable payments across a whole jurisdiction and sometimes multiple jurisdictions. So not unnaturally, it's a complicated thing. There are a lot of things that people need to find out about and know before they can productively install it. There's a high initial investment because you have to get people, you have to train them, and all of that has to happen before they actually are ready to start implementing. Staff, acquiring and retaining staff is a significant problem, not in all jurisdictions, but in some. It may be difficult for you to get the people you need with the skills you want, and you're responsible for making sure that they continue to want to work for you and don't just go off and found their own systems integrator companies. But eventually, you will be independent. You won't need to rely on any external parties to run your system. Alternatively, I could pay an SME to train my staff. So essentially they come in and start the implementation. While it's going on, they are training my staff, and when the implementation is over, in theory at least, my staff will be ready, willing and able to operate the implementation if I want them to. Now, the problem with this, we've found, I think, is that complex software projects are always underestimated. So what happens in this situation is we wind up with a number of hard decisions where people say, well, we haven't got much time, we haven't got much budget. Are we going to spend it on implementing or training? And the answer to that is almost always we're going to spend it on implementing. So you wind up, I'm not going to say with the worst of both worlds, but you wind up without your staff trained to the level that you would hope. And therefore you find that you are dependent in ways you did not originally envisage on the subject matter experts who helped you with your implementation. And then finally, I'm going to have one that says, concentrating on being a great customer. Now, we don't think enough, I think, in the MojaLoop world about what an implementer needs to be like to be a great customer of MojaLoop. But I think we're going to get an answer at some point in this presentation about what that is. So that's all I have to say on the subject in introduction. And I now want to pass the microphone to Jadida, who is in the throes, I might say, of implementing what's probably, I think it's fair to say, is the most complicated MojaLoop system that we have yet needed to do. It's a multi-jurisdiction, regional system featuring currency conversion and allowing different jurisdictional systems to trade with each other. So I'd like Jadida, if you wouldn't mind, to talk about her experience of going through that implementation, what the most difficult things to implement or define were. Jadida.
Thank you, Michael, and very interesting topic for me because as a clearinghouse, we find ourselves in a very interesting position. We have two systems. Our current system that runs, which is REPS, and this was built by a vendor technology. And we then have the DRPP that we are currently implementing, which is powered by an open source solution, which is MojaLoop. So I think we have a real perspective of what these things are. And before I answer your question, Michael, I would like to say that irrespective of whether it's vendor system or it's open source, there's common things that we want, we would like to see. And number one is that we hope to get reliable support. That is the one thing, because these systems are the heartbeat of what we do. And if we do not get support when we need it, how we need it, it means we are creating a risk on our system. And for us, being multi-jurisdictional, the systemic risk would be so great. And all the work that we've done would put the system in a very difficult position. And yesterday I heard a statistic. Somebody said, even if your uptime is 99.6%, the 0.4% is actually what defines your success. It defines your success. It could bring you down. So for us, it's the vendor support. Rather, the technical support is so key. Secondly, we would like to see knowledge transfer done. I don't know if you're going to speak about this earlier, but it's so important to me because we do not want to be left, like you've just said there, in a situation where changes happen with either the implementer or the vendor, and you're really left in a lurch. So that's another thing we would like to see. Something else that's really close to us, regardless of whether it's open source or it's vendor based, is we would like flexibility to be able to make changes, because we are operating in an environment where the payments landscape is changing so quickly. And if you take long to catch up, other systems take you, they leave you behind. So that's the kind of flexibility that we would like. And what else comes to mind? Lastly, it's the flexibility to work with different experts so that the needs that you're looking for at any one particular time, and depending on your circumstance, can be quickly addressed. And I speak that from experience, because sometimes you want to make a change and your budget is very restricted. But because you have just the one vendor who can do it, you cannot go out to look for something more affordable. You really have to go with what is there. It delays processes and it costs you money. So I just thought I should say that first. Now, with regard to the experience that we have had, we are still in implementation phase. And we have to see our implementer every day. I think that's the one thing that comes to mind. Availability and access to the implementer is key, and that is the one thing we have enjoyed so far. Unlike, and perhaps the question was, you didn't ask me to compare, but because we are in both systems, I cannot help but think of some of the things we have experienced in this implementation journey that we have really found so different from the past, is access to the implementer and access. So even if it's not the implementer that you have and you have your own staff, it means you are able to then let them know what you want to do, when you want it done, and in what form you want it. That has been really key for us. Now, secondly, is the ability to change things as you go, because you start off with a certain trajectory, and as you're implementing and come across a change that needs to be done, or you need to change the model that you originally thought would work, but you're now saying this will not work. So our experience is having a MojaLoop solution now has made it very easy to adapt to the changes. We adapt so quickly. We are able to bring people to the table and discuss, will this work for us? Yes. Will it not? No. We drop that. We move on to the next. And that's the ease of having this open source solution. It's being able to remain relevant, even though, even if you take time to implement your solution and things change along the way, you remain relevant because you can change with it as you go. Very different from our past experience, where what you agreed at first is what has to be delivered, and anything else after that comes as a change and at an additional cost. And those are the things that come to mind, Michael, for now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jadida. Let me move on. Seems to me, yes, it's on now. Let me now.
I think it's you, Michael.
Yeah, it must be. Let me now move across to Nii. Now, Nii, as you know, is the CEO of FitserWorks, who are an experienced implementer of MojaLoop systems. And what I wanted to find out from you, Nii, is first of all, the sorts of value that a systems integrator can add. And second, what sorts of things you would recommend to make sure that you adapt to the sorts of things that Jadida has said she wants, particularly in relation to the ability to have her own staff become experienced parts of the operation of the system, even if they are not in fact operating it.
Thank you, Michael. Just like Jadida, this topic is also very important to us as FitserWorks, as I'm sure to other system integrators as well. It's the balance that we need to find between, as a private companies, right, on how to help the central banks and the regulators and the hub operators be able to own these platforms at the end of the project, right? But at the same time, as a private company, we need to think of how we can remain relevant, right? So I'll talk to you about the other questions that you asked. We started learning about MojaLoop in 2020, and we are starting our 7th MojaLoop deployment. So we have seen a lot of MojaLoop deployments with a lot of expectations from the stakeholders on how a vendor can support the implementation and what they expect at the end of those projects. What I can say is that this vendor locked-in issue is one of the top priorities for the adopters. Knowing the consequences of having a vendor-led solutions and dependency on vendor, a lot of adopters, central banks and regulators are concerned with the dependency on a vendor, a particular vendor, to be able to manage the platform. So we are very well aware of that. We have seen different flavors on how they try to address that. Some central banks will have the priority to train their internal capacity to be able to not only maintain the platform after it goes live, but also be a part of the building process, design process, and they want to take an ownership right from the beginning. And we are very supportive of that, and will play a role of a knowledge sharing in that instance. Because we have experience deploying these systems in our jurisdiction, we can bring in those experiences so that they don't have to repeat the mistakes that we have done, and also take advantage of the best practices that we have seen in different places. So I think the value that we can bring is the time to market, right? Can be shorter with the less mistakes, because we are not repeating those mistakes. In some jurisdiction, even though they have that vision, they may not have the capacity right away. So instead of waiting for the internal capacity to be trained, they want to speed up the go-to-market, so they rely on the international system integrator like us, right, to help them reach that go-to-market timeline. So that's another value, right? So every jurisdiction has different requirements. They have different internal capacity. So depending on the strategy, depending on the timeline, right, what is the tolerance for the delays, if there are delays? What is the tolerance for learning, right, this system? Everybody is different. So depending on that, we can come in and then we can customize a program where we do more or we do less, right? So in either case, even if our fingers are not on the keyboard, we will be right with them, helping them achieve this goal of owning this platform after the system goes live.
Thanks very much, Nee. One thing that I thought I might add, though you were too polite to mention it, is that I think I'm right in saying that FitSerWorks' engagement with MojaLoop originally began as a customer, as an organization that wanted to implement a MojaLoop, and therefore they've been through the customer journey themselves, and so successfully that, as Nee says, they are now able to act as subject matter experts for other implementers.
Michael, Jadida, let me just add that you raised a very good point. So I want to reassure those in the audience, especially central banks who are thinking about or being concerned about the vendor locked in. We are a perfect example of, overcoming this. Right? Just like Michael said, we were the customer, we were the hub operator who were working with the international SI. Let me name the team. It's called Infotix Africa now, but it used to be called Motorspokes. They were the international system integrator helping us implementing the solution. And they were very gracious to share knowledge and train our staff. And we are able to learn about MojaLoop, right? Working with the international SI who has experience deploying these systems in other jurisdictions. And now we are in the position where we are helping other local system integrators with the same benefit that we achieve. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Jadida.
May I please allow me to comment on something that Nyi said? Is that sometimes when you start implementation, the focus is on certain goals that you need to achieve, and you rely a lot on the implementer, to then do the work for you, to do the tech work for you, with the hope that when you are then ready to take over those functions, the knowledge transfer can happen at the time. So very good to hear your experience and how you support businesses and those who are implementing the solutions to make sure that whatever model they choose to go with ultimately leaves them with the choice that they have made that is good for them, good for their institutions. Tying that to what was said yesterday about sovereignty, I believe it's something that even we as COMESA eventually will look at to say what we want ultimately is, of course, some control. And like I said, option to then work with different experts saves you further down the line in terms of time, in terms of resources as well. So thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay. We are also fortunate to have some guest appearances on this from people who have particular expertise in kinds of implementation models. The first of those I'd like to call on is Muta Mushembusi, who is, first of all, needs no introduction. Can we get a microphone to him? Thank you. Though he needs no introduction, is the project manager who implemented Tanzania TIPS, which is a successful in a jurisdictional interoperable payment system. I think that's true. Muta and his team decided that essentially they wanted to do everything themselves. They took that burden on. They successfully created a working system that's currently doing millions of transactions and big success. Muta, can you talk about your experience?
Thank you, Michael, for making me being a guest appearance. But I just wanted to share in terms of the choices that jurisdiction, hub operators or central banks might need to make in terms of how they would want to go forward on the implementation of national switches. And I know Jadida has been in that spot when deciding how they would want to handle the implementation of this switch. So for the Bank of Tanzania and Tanzania in general, we were also in that spot, and we had opted to do everything ourselves. And for implementers, they would, if whoever will be in that position really needs to assess their status in their country as well as in their organization. For the Bank of Tanzania, it was a strategic move in terms of the building capabilities of developing softwares related to payments, because we looked at a way that we would be doing this not only for the national scheme, but also for other platforms that are similar to this. So it was quite important for us to be able to build that capacity. And as I think, as Nyi mentioned, you have to agree and decide as a country, do you want to deliver the product first or you want to build capacity? Because balancing the two is actually very difficult. And for Tanzania, we chose to build capacity. And I think we were able to work with Infitix, Modus Box, as a way that to build capacity for our teams to be able to develop and build skills that will assist us to develop not only tips, but also for additional platforms. But in a way, when I assess the situation in Tanzania, I see we had a system integrator in a way that we were able to utilize resources from other institutions and put them together to be able to develop. And in a way, even now, if I have like a project that I want to do, I'm able to utilize similar resources or even new ones, so as they are able to assist me to deliver a product even quickly. And also, we are able to address the challenge of making sure that you are able to reduce the staff turnover, because I understand that is one of the major issues that we can address. But again, as you pointed out, Michael, it's really, really important that you get assurances and you're able to agree as a country or as an institution on your way forward.
Thank you very much, Muta. Just a couple of questions, if I may. First of all, am I right in thinking that you had the core of an existing team who were experienced developers, so you weren't starting from scratch in that way?
Yes. So for the Bank of Tanzania, we've always been developing softwares for our internal system. So it's something that was already our core competence, but we wanted to level up the level of skills for our team, and therefore we had to conduct capacity building for our teams to be able to develop the softwares even further.
Okay, thank you. And the other, pardon me. The other question that I wanted to ask is, are there any things that you would advise an implementer who is thinking of building capacity and then implementing? Any pitfalls that you would advise them to look out for?
Okay, as a business, you would want to deliver products as quickly as possible. So you need to fight that battle a lot, and it should be one of the assessment criteria for your success of delivering such project. So instead of just having use cases developed, but you should also have your team, your development team, or even the business team to have the capacity and the level with which they are able to further develop the product, even beyond the initial development phase. So the challenge that we had faced was, building up capacity, ensuring that we are able to tell our management that we are now using APIs. We need to train our people who may be good developers, but they were not having such kind of technology.
Okay, thank you very much. We talk a lot about implementing MojaLoop as implementing switches, but switches are not the only thing where you need to have integrators and developers in order to construct a working system. You also need to be able to connect the financial institutions, and these are financial institutions of all kinds, some of them large and sophisticated, international banks, for instance, large mobile money concerns, some of them quite small and informal. So it's often forgotten, I think, when we look at the overall difficulty and cost of creating a national payment system, the requirements for connecting the individual participants. Now, I know that Elijah Akello from Infotex has had considerable experience in this area, so I'd just like him to talk through some of the issues that he has faced in his long and entirely successful career, connecting individual participants to MojaLoop schemes. Elijah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael, for this opportunity. Yes, I do have experience in integrating financial institutions. Now, I think the biggest problem that we have seen with integrating financial institutions or DFSPs, and in the case of COMESA, foreign exchange providers as well, is political alignment with the institution. So you see, implementing a payment system, regardless of whether it's national or cross-border, is heavily regulated. And in Africa, because we have different silos of regulatory jurisdictions, it's hard to get everyone aligned. So I'm going to give an example of, if let me say you are integrating a bank in Uganda. If you approach the bank, the management of the bank needs to be aligned with this integration. So there's a couple of stakeholders that all need to be in sync, for the integration to technically become alive. So if I'm going to give you an example, if everyone is aligned, the management of the bank, the system integrator, the central bank, and the hub operator, it's possible to achieve the integration in less than even a month, give or take 3 weeks, from designing, implementation, testing, quality assurance. That is if everyone is ready to jump on meetings at any time to make things happen. It becomes a different case when the management of the bank is not aligned, so they have other priorities. They'll tell you, oh, this person is on leave. Can we talk about it next week? So small things like that keep on adding and making the what would have been just a technical API integration become a more political discussion. And you find that there are some financial institutions that, because they are multinationals, the group in Nigeria is like, no, we need a PCA DSS license. Yet, as an IIPS, we don't even touch cards. So, and then they'll say, you need to have an ISO 27001 certification. MojaLoop is a relatively new software, right? And because it is open source, you don't expect the foundation to have an ISO 27001. I mean, they can get it, but it's not something that you would expect an open source community to have. So the challenges around integrating financial institutions, I think rather than them being technical, it's very political and it's a compliance nightmare. So I would advise that if we are going to integrate financial institutions, let's start by, if whoever is in charge, let us start by addressing the decision makers first before we even sign any implementation contracts. Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much, Elijah. Could I just ask a supplementary question?
Sure.
You've correctly, I think, highlighted the importance of stakeholder management to the successful integration of DFSPs into a national payment system. In your ideal world, would that be a function that the systems integrator would be responsible for, or the scheme owner?
Yeah, that's for the scheme owner, not the system integrator. System integrator is just pointed, do that, and they execute. But if they're blocked, they might not they might not be able to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, Judita.
I would like to follow that. And thanks, Elijah. He's put it so clearly. I couldn't have said it any better. And on the last point, yes, it is a scheme owner. And the first point is to actually come up or present the value proposition that you have. Because if you're telling DFSPs to join a certain rail or platform, but they don't know what they're going to get out of it, then they're going to have a very lackadaisical approach to your program. So scheme owner must first put out the business case, put out the value proposition, and when all that is agreed, that is when the tech team will come on board, and then it becomes a much easier conversation. And once the tech team is on board, maybe the issues that come up would be, or we are also implementing something else, and we do not have enough resources to put to this technical aspect. But it's a much easier discussion. There's something else Elijah mentioned that I thought I could touch on a little bit, and that is around issues to do I remember what you said now? When you were speaking, I had it on my mind. I needed to mention it. If I do remember, I'll come back to
Licenses?
it. No.
Okay.
I'll come back to it. But thank you for putting that out very clearly. And yeah, over to you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elijah, for your contribution. Finally, I'd like to, well, something not necessarily finally, but I would like to come to someone who works for an institution which I would say has made it its mission to become the best customer it can be for payment systems. That's the State Bank of Pakistan. And I'd like to ask Hina Hamid just to talk about her experiences with the State Bank of Pakistan and what it takes to become a great customer for payment systems. Can someone get a microphone to Hina, who's over there? Ah, excellent.
So in order to become a great customer, I'm not sure, Michael, but in order to run a national payment system, yes, I believe our work is never completed. So we do one use case and then we onboard entities on it, and there's something new in terms of use cases, in terms of business cases within that use case. Entities which we have already onboarded, there are new licensing regimes and new types of entities which want to become participant. So it's something which is ongoing, and what we foresee as our responsibility is to support entities, market, consumers, and also all of the stakeholders which either benefit from us or we are trying to serve. For instance, our payment system not only does P2P, it also serves the government, because being a central bank, we are banker to the government, right? So there are always new use cases in terms of serving the government. So we are also working towards it. So I just would go back to a point where I believe Jadida mentioned that vendor lock-in effect with a proprietary system, and then moving on, you move to an open source system, right? So on that, just my thoughts, because we are currently in that process. We do have a system, it's good, it's handling whatever we wanted it to do, but in order to move forward with new use cases and business cases, we are exploring the options of open source, right? So for that, if any of the fellow bankers, any of the fellow central bankers are going through this process, what I would like to share in terms of my experience is try to keep the knowledge of architecture, the use cases, the user flows with your team. And then the implementation, for the implementation, you can have help from the vendors or system integrators. So the more you know your use case, the architecture, the payment flows, the better would you be able to guide whoever is your implementation partner in order to come up with something which is workable. So yes, consultants basically do help you out in going there, but I believe it's the central bank or whoever is running the switch or the payment system, it's their responsibility to understand the market, the experience, and then also what use case or business case you're trying to build. So yeah, that's what I had to say.
Thank you very much, Hina. Ni or Jadida, do either of you have comments on that?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that. And much appreciated. I remembered what Elijah said, and I wanted to follow up with a comment. It's never about the system, the technology. And we're so happy with what we are implementing now on the MojaLoop solution. What Elijah said about the political side or the bureaucracies, is that even if you've convinced the people you're onboarding or the institutions that you're onboarding what they stand to benefit, sometimes the bureaucracy of the process to get them started to come onto the solution means that it's the smaller institutions that come in first because their processes are quicker, decisions are made at the local level, and Elijah mentioned an example where we have these multinational banks. Some of them decisions are not made in the jurisdiction you're operating in, so it takes long, and then those that are local come on board sooner. So platform, perfect, but other things then come into play.
Thank you very much, Jita. I just want to squeeze in, if I can, particularly following on from what Hina said. We have an example in Rwanda itself of a payment system operator who undertook what I would call the Herculean task of implementing a different payment system for a new use case and then moving the old use cases onto the new payment system. Is there anyone from R-Switch who would be prepared to just talk a little about their experience in that area? Oh, okay, there we are.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
It's a pleasure.
So yeah, from our Switch experience, obviously we did platform modernization. So we did evaluate our capabilities then at that time, and then based on our projection, our business roadmap, our ambition, that was a key value proposition to actually migrate to MojaLoop. Obviously, it wasn't easy. It took us a bit, almost 2 years, 1.5 years. But the key part was, the standard migration process where you have to look at functional part of it, right? What are the functionalities that you can actually migrate from, from your legacy platform to the new platform. Struggle a bit with the customizations because we had a lot of customizations around there that we needed to figure out how we can actually push those migrations. Also, data was also another key important part that we actually look at the data compatibility, right? Luckily, we had a very strong solution integrator from Wiredin, and we were able to actually craft out very clever solutions around that. We are glad that now we are past that, but it was actually a very, enjoyable journey, but very challenging as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We are out of time, I'm afraid, and if we were in the room next door, I would be able to see Ploon approaching the plant. But there are no plants. So I just have, yes, indeed. So it only remains for me then to thank both of my illustrious panelists for their great contributions, and indeed the contributions from the audience, which I think were completely fascinating, and to thank you all for taking the time and trouble to listen.